rarely ever do gauge swatches, and it's never failed me wrong. Well, it has. Hello, welcome back to my channel, Knits by Mandy. I'm Amanda, and this is our second knitting podcast on the channel. So if this is your first time at my channel, mostly talk about knitting here. It's pretty self-explanatory, but if you're new and you'd like to catch up on some videos that I posted in the past, I recently just posted a video about planning for spring. I did a window shopping style video where I was looking at specific patterns and picking out different yarns for them. And the video after that, I was doing a knit and chat. So it was a really chill video where you can actually just, I'm sitting here on the couch chatting and you can see me work on one of my projects. So in this podcast today, we'll just talk about finished objects that I've had and completed since the last time I filmed a podcast, which was at the end of February, and any WIPs, which I have lots of WIPs unintentionally, and acquisitions, and I'm just gonna touch on my future plans. So with that, we'll get started, and I'll just go these over here and we'll talk about all of them. So I wanted to get started with the first thing I made, which was this vest. And it turns out that this vest was actually made with We Are Knitters yarn. And I thought now might be a good time to briefly touch on the We Are Knitters Zara collab that a lot of us were talking about over on Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram if you'd like. So with that, I'm gonna put chapters in this video, and if you're not interested at all about this yarn company and a collab they did with Zara, you can go skip ahead to where I talk about the knitting. I'll see you there. The We Are Knitters Zara collab. If you're not familiar, We Are Knitters is a pretty popular yarn company, and they kind of had marketed themselves as a sustainable brand that's a part of the slow fashion movement. And you know, I have used their yarns before. I really like them, and I definitely think they were kind of like a trendier kind of brand, kind of like an Instagram kind of brand, kind of like Wool in the Gang, right? A few weeks ago on their Instagram, they announced a collaboration with Zara Man, where they were selling 2 crochet kits alongside with some other of Zara's crocheted pieces. And this was not received well on Instagram. And basically when this came out, a lot of, I think, people that shop there were really confused and upset because it seems really antithetical to their values and their mission. If you're not familiar, Zara is a huge fast fashion company, and they're pretty widely known for having unethical labor practices. As a caveat, I should have said before I started all of this, I'm not really interested in shaming anyone's personal decisions to shop at any store, but I think it is important to still be able to have dialogues about this and talk about it. And I think what made people upset was that We Are Knitters is a brand that has made talking about sustainability and slow fashion as a part of their brand and how they've marketed themselves to people. And then to see them turn around and collab with Zara, I think was disappointing, confusing, upsetting, all of the above. So in these kits, they were selling, one was for a cell phone holder and the other was for a bucket hat, and they either had 1 to 2 balls of cotton yarn in them, and they were priced at €50, which I think is quite expensive for the raw materials that you're going to make. You could easily buy a pattern yarn and a needle for much cheaper, not on the Zara website. The second thing about this is it just didn't really make sense. I'm not really sure who's buying a crochet kit from Zara. And I think I'll touch on that later, but they were selling them alongside these tops from Zara that were less money than these kits. So the tops were around $30 and these kits are $50. So you're selling the raw materials of a garment or not even of a garment, of an accessory for cheaper than the price that Zara sells their finished items. So the math wasn't really adding up. All this to say, I think We Are Knitters released a statement. You can go check it out for yourself and kind of, you know, make your own opinions. But I wasn't really satisfied with their answer. Turns out, allegedly, they weren't getting paid for this collab. So they kind of like went out of their way to like go against their brand's values to collab with this like brand for just name recognition and not even for money. I'm not a business person, so I don't know. And I just think it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth. And also say that like not every yarn company is sustainable. Those are just the facts. But if you're marketing your companies that and then going with Zara, it's a tough sell. It's a really tough sell. There's pretty good discourse I feel like going on online, and I feel like you know, it's important to have these conversations. I have We Are Knitters yarns in my stash still, so I'm definitely going to use those. I would recommend that you use whatever you have in your stash as well, as long as you like it, because the most sustainable thing is using what you own. And I actually did receive a gift card to We Are Knitters for my birthday the week before this all happened, and I honestly really wouldn't expect a friend that is not in the knitting community to have known about this, even if it was after this all happened. So We Are Knitters like still has their money, and I'm gonna cash in the gift card. So all to say, you will see We Are Knitters yarn like on this podcast and on my channel, but I'm not really trying to put like a lot more of my money towards it. Maybe whatever, like if there's leftover money from when I want to purchase something with a gift card, which I don't see as like the hugest deal on the grand scheme of things. So hello, it's Editing Amanda here, and just with a few quick brief interludes. Two things. The Hairy Knit, like I put in the card earlier, has a really much more in-depth video on this, so I'd recommend checking it out if it's something that interests you. And the second thing is, and I'm gonna link all of this in the description below, that WonderCocreations on Instagram did a really awesome like highlight of indie dyers. So if you want to go out and, you know, you're reinvigorated to not support corporations, I'm just going to link to that because I think it's a really good resource that I'll definitely be referring back to as I try to, you know, kind of diversify where I'm spending my money. So that's just, I'm going to put those as resources for you in the chat. I also would love to know your thoughts on this. If you do have thoughts in the chat, I'll put down low. Okay. Back to Amanda. That being said, I would love to talk about my one finished object from the past month, which is this vest that I made with Petite wool from We Are Knitters. I will say this yarn is pretty soft, but I'm looking at it, I already saw some places where the yarn is starting to pill, and that's because it is a single ply yarn. So single ply yarn just gets nubby and pilly really easily. And the story behind the sweater vest is that Bethany from Well Love Knits has a V-neck pattern. I think it's called the classic V-neck pattern, in an accompanying video where she doesn't exactly give you the whole pattern, but she kind of walks through the construction of this V-neck. And in that video, it had really nice cables on it. However, I think at the time she really wasn't, she was like, I knit this with cables, but I'm not going to include that because like I don't feel like I'm like ready to do that. But I was like, but I want that. I want it to look like that. So I'm gonna go buy her pattern if you want a V-neck pattern. I purchased it because like I still want to support her, even though I kind of changed a few things, but because I really got this idea from her. So with that being said, go buy the pattern. However, I did not make this like the pattern stated. And I hope that's okay. So I was gonna make a whole video about this, but then I felt like that wasn't right. So I'm mentioning it now. We'll talk about it very briefly because she does have a whole video on this. Basically, she does a construction where she knits, starts at the back panel and then picks up stitches for the front. and then all you do is seam up the sides. You pick up the shoulder stitches. I decided to do a bottom-up construction in the round, and I thought, because I wanted to include the cables, so I used like her ideas for the neck shaping and the armpit shaping. So, but I did kind of do my own math on how to put the cables and kind of put in this garter stitch center and the center cord. So my one note, I guess, if you would like to add cables to her pattern, is that, and again, I use a different size yarn than she used, but I'm gonna forget which cables go which way, but one cable's like, if you hold your cable needle in one direction, either in the front or in the back, the cable will go left, and if you turn it in the other direction, either in the back, it'll go the other way. That's not gonna make any sense because I forget which direction is which. Basically, I made it so that the cables both turned inwards. So they're both turning this way. And then this inner one gets decreased kind of out, and I kept the single column right next to the V-neck. So, and these are just 6 stitch cables, and you want to make sure whenever you do cables, you're doing a purl column next to it. So for every knit stitch, this is a purl stitch, just 1 stitch, so that your cables stand out on your sweater. So that's all I'll say about that. I really like this piece. I'm happy with it. I think it'll be a good staple. Hopefully I can kind of keep ahead of the pilling of this yarn, but it is quite soft. It is a quite soft single ply wool. I do think I still have more left over. It was supposed to kind of stash bust, but here we are. So this is my V-neck inspired by Well Knits. Well-loved knits. After I finished that sweater vest, things in my life got really crazy, and I think you'll see that reflected in my knitting from this past month. In this past month. So to catch anyone up who like hasn't been watching my videos, I quit my job. I took a week off, started a new one, celebrated my birthday, got food poisoning the weekend of my birthday. The next weekend, last weekend, my boyfriend, or I guess that's 2 weekends ago, my boyfriend and I went to New York for 24 hours. He had Christmas tickets, not Christmas tickets, he bought me show tickets for Christmas. All to say, things have just been a little wacky and unstable lately, which is fine, you know, gotta ride the waves of life, but it's shown in my knitting. So the first thing I'll show you is my James Watts Pure Mesh Pullover, which I was knitting in my Knit and Chat video. So I don't think I have the cake of yarn with me. Where did I put it? So I think in my last video, I went on this whole tangent about how I rarely ever do gauge swatches and it's never failed me wrong, or led me astray. It's never failed me. Well, it has. It caught up to me, and I think I'm finally converted into the proper way of doing things, or the sensical way of doing things at least. So this is nothing wrong with the pattern. This is just my poor planning. This is a mesh. It's supposed to be a mesh top. Obviously, it's not gonna look like that, like this. So I got the fur. You can see the first 2 panels done, and I sewed them together. I did a 3 needle bind off. And then I picked up stitches along the side for the sleeve. And this is where, like, I kind of anxiety spiraled, like knitting anxiety set in. So the story behind this shirt was that I wanted to have this ready by my birthday because I wanted to wear it when my friends and I went out. And obviously I didn't finish it, not the end of the world. I got this sparkly fingering weight yarn from a Etsy shop called Lynns Fine Yarns. And I honestly think this yarn is really pretty, and I hope to find something to do with this if it's not this top. I want to make this top. So I think I did a few things wrong. I did not pick the right size. I did not do a gauge swatch, even though I picked a size larger yarn, and I tried to rush myself. So it was really a perfect storm to not be doing things well over here. So what I ended up doing was I also thought I was playing yarn chicken, which I don't know how true that is looking at this cake now again, but I had convinced myself that I was running like dangerously low on yarn because I only bought one ball of yarn. All this to say, I tried to make this short sleeve, like I'll just make a t-shirt. And then he has very specific instructions for how to switch from, like switch your stitch count from the lace to the ribbing so that you have enough space when you go to a small size to do the ribbing. Okay, my video stopped for a second. So you have enough space for a small size to do the ribbing. If you please look at this, I don't know what I was thinking. How is this circumference going to fit on my upper arm? Maybe my wrist, but not my upper. This would not even fit around my arm. So, yeah, I wasn't really being smart with this one. So I put it in timeout until now, and it will probably stay like this for a while. I'm just not ready to pick this up again. But I learned a few things. I learned that a little planning goes a long way. And then I think with something as kind of intricate as this, I really couldn't afford to wing it. And that I didn't really love knitting lace. Especially something like this, I do like the relaxing kind of meditative zone out aspect of knitting. And this was, I really had to pay attention. I was worried about making a mistake because I had no idea how to fix it. So that was kind of just like hanging over my head the whole time. I still think I will make this because it's a fun challenge and like I just think it's a really cool design, but I'm gonna have to take some time. I've already taken time. I'm gonna have to take some more time to unravel and kind of come back to this. So that is the Pure Mesh pullover. Nothing again about the pattern itself. I think it's pretty well written and pretty clear. I'm just a little silly sometimes. All right, the next WIP that I have is the Bowvine tank by Park and Knit, which I did talk about in my Knit and Chat video briefly, but I didn't talk about in my last podcast. So if you're here from there, this is a new to you project. And this is a colorwork intarsia project. It's supposed to be a tank top. It looks like a tube. We'll get there. And you knit it in panels, and you knit the colorwork panel and you knit the back panel. So when I picked this up a few weeks ago, I had just done this first panel last summer, kind of towards the end of the warmer months of the year, and I realized I wasn't really gonna wear this, I think, for a while. So I just put it down. I intentionally couched this one because there were other things that I wanted to work on in the colder months, and I said, I'll pick up this tank top when it's warm. Like, cow print crop top season is past, but she always comes back. So wait till she comes back and we can construct. So it's funny because I don't know if I would pick to make this tank top now. I just like don't love working on things flat, and I don't like seaming things up. I've become so like, if I can't do it in the round, do I want to do it kind of knitter, which I don't think is the worst thing, but it doesn't hurt us. So anyway, I knit the back panel, attached it. All I have to do is add the straps, which are like double knit. And this is my magnum opus. Like, this is my Mount Everest, is just like doing these straps. It's not hard, but it's boring and I don't feel like doing it. So I will get there. And by the way, this is knit in CotLin by Knit Picks in like black, and I think the white color is called Swan. Honestly, this is kind of linty. I had this sitting on my couch and there's black lint on my couch. So it was pretty cheap. It was pretty inexpensive. So that is the Bowvine tank. I'm excited once it's done. But you know when like you've been kind of just like, I'm like, it's been this long. Like I can wait a few more weeks. I really just need to kind of buckle down and crank this out. Maybe I'll do that once I'm done with my next WIP, which I'll show you. That next WIP is the one I'm most excited about. So I had a few, duds. I worked on a few things that I like couldn't gain traction on, and I just wasn't excited about. But then, all my excitement happened with my job. I was sick, and I was like, it is time to cast on the Anker sweater by Petite knit with my knitting for olive merino wool. And I am so glad I did, because I started this a week and a half ago, and this is like pretty good progress for me. I'm like chugging right along on this sweater, and I just kind of gushed about this color, like the idea of lilac and lavender in my last video. But this color, like, look, I feel like this should be the thumbnail, but like I just think this is so complimentary of my skin tone. I'm obsessed. I actually bought an exercise dress in this color like last year, and now I've purchased so many things. I have glasses this color, like I don't know, I have a lot of things this color. I made another tank top in it in the summer. Expect to see this around. So let's get on to the actual like sweater and the experience and the yarn. I'll start with the yarn. It's knitting for olive. They're merino in Artichoke purple, which I love that name. And I don't think I've actually ever worked with 100% merino before. I've worked with superwash merinos, now that I'm remembering, and those were soft. But this is so different. It's like, this is so nice. And I might be preaching to the choir of kind of maybe more experienced knitters, but there's something about this that's like unlike any merino sweater I've ever owned. It's unlike any yarn I've ever felt before. And you might be just like, yeah, that's what like a nice merino feels like. And that's fine. You could let me know. Basically, it almost feels like it has a cotton like aspect, but it's softer. And I own like, I thrifted a few merino wool sweaters, like one's from Brooks Brothers and one's from J. Crew. And I know that they're on my skin. They're not itchy, but I can feel them. This is just, it's not itchy. It's like soft. I'm holding it double, so it's squishy. I am just like having a really enjoyable time. I mean, really enjoying myself knitting this, because like the sensory experience is so nice. It's like, it feels really nice. I like how it looks. Like the ribbing just like feels so nice in my hands, and then you get on with the stockinette net stitch. I'm just like really obsessed with this sweater and this yarn, which maybe this is like a bit dramatic, but so this is what it looks like. This is a pretty popular pattern, so you may have seen this before, but the yoke is done in these sections of 1x1 ribbing, and you make increases in between those sections, and then you know, finish the rest of the sweater. So I was kind of tempted to just make this a t-shirt, but I actually think I'll like this more as a sweater. It's a little heavy, I think, for a t-shirt, at least this ribbing section. I don't think would be, I mean, I know she has that, but I don't know if I would wear that. If I did have a t-shirt, I maybe want to knit it in a cotton or something. But I'm really happy with this. I'm really planning on like lasering in on this, because it's just really nice to make, and I'm just enjoying the stockinette and being relaxed while I make it. So you kind of sometimes, if you feel kind of like unfocused, or you know, like nothing's really like hitting the spot, sometimes it's really good just to go towards what's like really calling you, even though you have this idea of like, well, I've had these things planned for so long, I just want to get them done, but like I just keep coming back to this, and I'm gravitating towards it, and I'm enjoying it. And I think sometimes you just have to do it. And I think, you know, it's easy to kind of stress ourselves out, or, you know, have certain ideas in our heads of when we want to finish things or get things done by. And knitting is so good because you can only knit so fast, and it like forces you to slow down, and it forces you to, you know, really just like take stock. And I don't know, I feel like I am like kind of much more in tune with like what I like spending my time doing if I'm, you know, knitting literal sweaters, which is so inefficient, but it's so fun. So those are kind of like been my knitting reflections and like lessons recently, is that there is really no rush, and it's okay to kind of float around. There's nothing wrong with it. There's no like prize for doing the most things in a year or getting the most things done. So that's just a good reminder, and I've kind of been sitting with that and kind of going to the projects that are calling to me. So stay tuned for more in the Anker sweater. I'm so excited. So the last thing I want to talk about is acquisitions, and I actually have no yarn acquisitions, but I do have just like a few accessories that I'll just share pretty quickly. They're, you know, they're little. So I am proud of myself for not buying yarn all month. I'm about to go buy some. I went to my local yarn store yesterday because a lot of my friends and family got me yarn gift cards. So I have a spin cycle one, which I'm really excited for. And I got 2 to my local yarn store, which is amazing. I got the We Are Knitters one. And so I just have really thoughtful friends that I've created a brand for myself. So I popped into the local yarn store, Looped here in DC, and I wanted to get these, I guess they're called TKB cords, and they're by this company called The Knitting Barber. And I think you can get these online. I'm not sure. Of course I pull out the longest one, but basically they're just these cords, if you don't know, that you can put onto the tips of your circular needles. And so for me, I cannot pull this cord length safely over my shoulders and back up without having some stitches fall off. So usually I like very preciously and precariously try on anything on my circulars. But now I can just slip these on, and like it just gives you a little more cord space. So you get a 60-inch one and I think two 30-inch ones, which that's 150 centimeters and 75 centimeters. So I got the white. They didn't have any really fun colors left, but that's okay. This doesn't have to be like the most colorful thing. So these are the 60 centimeter one, or the 60-inch one's pretty long. So just wrap these back up and put them in. I already used them today to try my sweater on, and it was a much better experience than my past thing. And honestly, I think this is such a small thing, but I think I'll use these a lot when I'm doing top-down constructions. And then these were a gift from a friend who's actually, she's a crocheter, and I have some of my plastic ones in here, but these are the brand the brand's under here. Coconuts. These are the brand Coconuts, and these are colorful split ring markers, and they're just really pretty stitch markers. And I've used the plastic ones of these shapes and I didn't like them, but I use these for the raglan stitches, and I really enjoyed them. They're really, really small, but for the camera, it sounds kind of silly, but yeah. Those are nice. I've been enjoying using those as well. So, whew, I do want to talk about a few more things. Provisions break. A few more things that I want to talk about, and I'll let you guys go. I did want to briefly kind of talk about my plans, because I think I've even changed my idea for what I want to knit since I made that planning video like a week ago. I do still want to knit Camo number 5 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, but I realized that I do have a fingering weight yarn left over from my sweater number 15, and it's kind of this copper color, and it's a We Are Knitters yarn, but I'm going to use that because it's in my stash, and so I'm excited about that. And then I've been talking about the Made You Fall dress, and I think I'm gonna stop talking about it for a little, because I decided I'm gonna like put a pin in it until maybe like late summer, and so that I'll have it by fall. I just don't see myself wearing it by the time I can finish it this spring. So I kind of want to prioritize on more summer things and things I'll wear. So I mentioned that I got a Spin Cycle gift card for Spin Cycle yarns, and they have really unique color changing yarns. And I think I just want to make like a t-shirt. I've been really wanting just like a hand knit that I can throw on for work calls. I work from home, but just like something that's like nice and not too revealing for those kinds of occasions like for work. Work is not an occasion, it's work. And then my last thing is that I do still think I want to knit a dress, and there's this pattern called, I think it's called the date night slip dress or the Friday night slip dress, and I want to make that in this corresponding like tie cardigan that I think is still in testing out of matching cotton. So I think that's what I might go to next after the Anker sweater. as far as next plan goes. That was like a very quick highlight just because I just made a whole video talking about that. So if you want to go watch that, you can check it out. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was like podcasts and shows, because I said I'd talk about that in my last video and I didn't. And so I kind of want to talk about what I'm listening to lately and what I'm watching, because when I'm knitting, I'm usually watching TV or listening to a podcast because my brain is rotted by my phone and I need stimulation at all times. I mean, I'm usually like after work enjoying a show. So, rundown of the shows that I'm watching right now. My boyfriend and I have started The Dropout on Hulu, which is about Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos. And I think the show is fantastic. I think it's a masterpiece. It's like hilarious and it's disheartening and it's fascinating. I'm not gonna give too much away. And I listened to the podcast The Dropout and I read the book Bad Blood, which is written by the Wall Street Journal journalist who like broke the story on Theranos. But it's fantastic. I think Amanda Seyfried is really good in it, and that's on Hulu. Also on Hulu is Abbott Elementary, which I think I already talked about in my Knit and Chat video, but it's fantastic. It's really good. I'm trying to think of anything else that's really sticking out. I'm a huge Bravo person, so I love reality television, and I've been watching New Jersey. I finished Salt Lake City. Summer House has been so good this season. It's been fantastic. And listen, it might not be your cup of tea, like people screaming and like getting drunk, and I get it. I understand. To me, it's like almost meditative. It's almost as calming as knitting. And I don't know what that says about me. I don't think I'm that kind of person that would be on a reality television show. I hate conflict. And I think that's why. I think I hate conflict. So watching people like be in each other's faces and like being in these forced situations, like it like does something for my brain. As far as podcasts go, I really enjoy listening to Maintenance Phase, which is about like basically fat phobia and diet culture, primarily in the United States. They did a really interesting one on Jordan Peterson, who I did not know really anything about, and he had kind of like talked about, he like started doing like a carnivore diet. It's really fascinating if that's kind of like your cup of tea. I don't really like true crime because I'm too scared for true crime. Like I don't like talking about like murders and like sexual violence. Like I really like don't like it at all. I feel like, ugh. But I do love like cult-ish leader people or like people with strange followings, like the whole like Theranos thing. Like I love Scam. That's my kind of true crime that I like. So I'm not saying, yeah. So that episode in particular was really good. If you like pop culture, Las Culturistas with Bowen Yang and Matt Rogers it like has me peeing, crying, laughing, throwing up on the floor. I think it's hilarious. And lastly, if to go back to Bravo, if you like listening to like Bravo related podcasts and you're not yet listening to SUP, which stands for Sexy Unique Podcast, you're doing it wrong. It has me in stitches. Like I do again, pee my pants. I have one more. Okay. I love a good podcast because I work at home and I just need voices to fill my home. My last one is called Normal Gossip, and this is like so up my alley. Actually, my friend who got me these also introduced me to Normal Gossip, and it's a podcast that basically people like send in their gossip. It's all anonymous. So it's like, okay, like this person's writing in and this is like a friend of a friend or something. And on episode 3, they do an episode where they talk about this woman who infiltrates a knitting group. And since you got this far into the end of the podcast, I will mention that I saw someone posted it in the Craftsmark subreddit, and the subreddit was not receptive to this podcast because apparently the people were not knowledgeable enough about knitting, which I thought it was funny. But basically like snarking on them in the podcast. It's really funny. I would recommend it if you're into that kind of thing. So those are all my recommendations for things I've watched and listened to. I would love to know what you've been keeping up with, what kind of keeps your mind busy in these trying times. And thank you for being here and for joining me for another podcast. Let me know if you like these episodes, and I'll hopefully have one next month, so you can go ahead and subscribe, you can like, you can comment, and I will see you next time. Thanks for being here. See you soon.